Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm not sure if you can hear me. I have a little bit of technical difficulties. If someone could do an audio check.
Good morning, Counselor. I can hear you. I'm not sure other people. This is Tren.
Thank you, Tren.
I can hear you, Julia. Good morning.
Good morning, Counselor Flynn. Thank you all. I'm just curious if everyone is here. I know we have various co-sponsors for this order. Wow. We have a lot of speakers. Cora, would you be able, good morning, would you be able to let me know when all of our folks are here?
Actually, I just see so far Liz Braden, but I'm trying to get her in. I can't seem to get her onto the panelist. I have Nisham, Bex Broadwood, PBDA, looks like Laura Rubin, Shanice Wallace, Tarnisha Green, Maduri Morikwa, I can't pronounce that too well, sorry. Kate Lopsy, Liz Zulik, Sunny Schwartz, Tren Nugent, and Michael Christopher so far. And also I want to mention that I have Josh, Counselor former Josh Jacob, also Zakem is going to be on the line. He just send me an email.
And
So
Counselor
I believe,
Counselor Baker and Bach are also part of the hearing order, I believe.
yeah, they haven't arrived yet. I don't see them yet.
I'm here, Frank.
Oh, good morning,
Are
Frank.
you-
Good
sorry,
morning.
I didn't see you here. Okay, great.
Let me know if we're good to get started, Cora, if we're live and all that good stuff. I think we are.
Morning, this is Chantal. Just wanted to see if we can bump Shanice Wallace as well to the panel. Thank you.
All right, so in the interest of time, I think I'm going to get going, if that's okay with everyone.
Okay,
Carrie here, Madam Chair. I'm ready to go when you are. I think once we promote people to panelists, they also have to okay that they're coming over to the other side. So for those folks who are waiting and can't get into the panelist group, you might have to just do that. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you, Carrie. So I'm gonna gavel us in. I'm calling this hearing to order. For the record, my name is Julia Mejia, City Councilor at Large. I'm the chair of the Boston City Council's Committee on Small Business and Workforce Development. I'm also joined by the sponsors of this docket, Councilor Baker of District 3, Councilor Flynn of District 2, Councilor Breeden of District 9, and we're waiting for Councilor Bach of District 8. I will also recognize my colleagues in the order of arrival once they arrive. But for now, I'm just going to start off with our usual script in accordance with the Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, modifying certain requirements of the open meeting law and relieving public bodies of certain requirements, including the requirement that public bodies conduct its meetings in a public place that is open and physically accessible to the public. The City Council will be conducting this hearing virtually via Zoom. This enables the City Council to carry out its responsibility while adhering to public health accommodations and ensuring public access to its deliberations through adequate alternative means. This public hearing is being recorded and it's also being live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-tv and broadcast on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, and Files Channel 964. For public testimony, written comments may be sent to the committee email at ccc.sbwd@boston.gov and will be made a part of the record and available to all councilors. We're also joined by Councilor Aaron Murphy at Large and Councilor Bach, District 8. Today's hearing is on docket 0732, a hearing regarding maximizing workforce development opportunities in biotech for Boston residents. We are joined by the following panelists. Midori Murakaya, Chief Officer of Economic Development, Michael Christopher, Intern Director of Development, Review BPDA, Shanice Wallace, Life Tech Industry Manager, OED, Tren Wynn, Director of Workforce Development, Bex Braun, a fellow at the Boston Planning Development Agency, also known as the BPDA. Advocates include Amy Nishman, Senior Vice President of Strategy at Jewish Vocational Services, William Ashton, Director Development of IQHQ, and you'll let us know what that acronym stands for. Sunny Schwartz, Chief Executive Officer at Mass Biotech Education Foundation, former Senator Joseph Boncourt, and current CEO of Mass Bio, Lauren Rubin, Dean STEM at Bunker Hill Community College, Elizabeth Zulik, PhD, MPH, Associate Teacher, Professor, Faculty Director, and Healthcare Biotech, Lowell Institute School and Northeastern University. Kate Lopik, Director of Workforce Development at Quincy College. We would normally start with opening remarks, but we received word from former Senator Boncourt's office that he has a time constraint. So we're going to start with his testimony, followed by William Ashton, Director of Development at IQHQ. And please make sure that you let us know what that stands for. William, that would be really helpful. And any brief questions before returning to the sponsors for brief remarks, should they wish to give any. Senator Boncourt, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Counselor. It's so wonderful to see you again. I also want to thank the other counselors who are present, Counselor Bach, Counselor Murphy, congratulations to you, as well as Counselor Baker and Counselor Flynn. It is really an honor to be at this hearing providing testimony. As many of you know, I am now the CEO of Mass Bio, which is the state-based trade association representing over 1,400 companies across the life sciences industry, the majority of which are biopharma companies working on developing really the next breakthrough therapy or cure. Today's hearing is an important one, and it's a very timely topic, and one that Mass Bio cares deeply about. Across Massachusetts, we are projecting an additional 20 million square feet of lab and biomanufacturing space coming online in the next 5 years. Along with that, we're predicting more than 40,000 net new jobs to Greater Boston to accommodate that 20 million square feet of lab and biomanufacturing space. Boston's share of that growth will certainly be significant, with an estimated 7 million square feet of new lab space being built across the city. This expansion in the next 4 years is really going to require substantial growth of the industry workforce. So using those 40,000 net new jobs as kind of a baseline, we expect a lot of those jobs to be taken by Bostonians within and throughout the city of Boston. As CEO of Mass Bio, this is a topic that really I think about daily. I know we cannot take for granted that these jobs will be filled. We must think very quickly and implement proactive partnerships between the industry, the city government, and academia to successfully meet this talent demand. Moreover, we must ensure that the best and brightest, no matter what their background or where they live, have a clear pathway to jobs in the biopharma industry. We are acutely aware, Madam Chair, that we have left behind in this industry many communities, specifically people of color. And I know that you're serving on a workforce council with myself and Ken Turner from the Life Science Center. And diversity, equity, inclusion is at the forefront of really the entire industry. So, to that end, I think there's really good news to report and more to come. First, many bio jobs and biopharma companies are not just scientist roles. every company has office jobs that they need to fill, like HR, finance, communications, as well as, business development, what we're here to talk about today. And I know that there are many successful job placement and career development programs across the city. And those programs, working hand in hand with industry and academia, can really create the opportunities for Bostonians seeking these types of roles. As Mass Bio, I can say that we're happy to do whatever we can to facilitate those connections. Second, there are established organizations, as we know, that are running programs to specifically educate people for careers in the life sciences. Our partners like Sunny Schwartz, who you'll hear from later from Mass Bioed, is running a very successful apprenticeship program that creates a new career pathway into clinical technician and biomanufacturing technician roles. And organizations like our city's own, the Benjamin Franklin Institute, has created pathway programs to get their students the education and experience that they need to enter into the life sciences industry. And there's even more coming. Mass Bio is just eager to be a resource and a connector for the entire city council as your partners on this issue. My ask of you today is to please let me know if there are organizations in Boston that are already doing this great work around career advancement and workforce training that we should be connected to. New partnerships, connections, and networks will really help us be successful in our shared goal of getting more Bostonians jobs in this amazing industry. Boston's history with the life science industry is long and extremely successful. As we look towards this expected growth, I'm excited for the opportunity it will bring to the city, to neighborhoods, and to most importantly, to city residents. So again, as Mass Bio, I look forward to working closely with this committee and the city council to answer any questions that you may have today following my testimony or throughout the rest of the council session. Because we really have an opportunity, a great opportunity in this city to start careers at our member companies with our constituents that we care most about. And I didn't mention Councilor Liz Brendan, so good afternoon, Councilor, to you as well. Good morning.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Bencour. I know previous senator, but still nonetheless, let's give some respect to that title. And I'm so encouraged by your remarks and looking forward to creating space for our colleagues to ask questions. I don't see William Ashton in the Zoom. So if you're here, please raise your hand so we can bring you in. And if not, we'll move out to questions for Senator Bencour. So I will ask my colleagues to ask their questions, starting off with the lead sponsors. So I'm going to go with Councilor Ed Flynn, District 2.
Well, thank you, Councilor Mejia. Thank you, Senator Boncory, as well, for the work you've done working with the biotech community, but also prior to that, you've been a strong supporter of getting young people into jobs and into career development programs and educational programs. So I want to say thank you to Senator Boncory, who I have great respect for. So my question to Joe is, one of the biggest concerns I have is getting young people, getting students as young as the first grade, second grade, involved in STEM subjects, especially residents in working class families and kids in public housing and immigrants and communities of color. So what are we doing at the earliest ages, Joe, to get, what is the biotech community doing to make sure kids at the earliest age are educated on STEM subjects?
Yeah, this is an important topic. And as you all know, the state has made significant efforts to, make more investment in STEM education with the Student Opportunity Act that, was just, that is going to be funded again this year in the tune of the 7-year program. I know Sunny Schwartz from our sister organization, Mass Bioed, will speak more about this subject, but Mass Bioed has been incredibly successful in finding schools in our BioTeach program, in which Mass Bioed will train teachers in the STEM field, science and math teachers, around the bio industry, right? And what they'll do is essentially give teachers a curriculum, give the teachers some training, so the teachers can open children's and students' eyes to what's going on in this field. It's not lost on us that not a lot of people are aware of what this industry can do, right? If you don't have a uncle or an aunt or a parent or a friend who is a scientist and in this industry, it's difficult to turn your attention to it. We're at an interesting point, I think, where unless you're a patient, right, you don't know what biotech does. If you don't have an unmet medical need, you're not going to consider what this industry has done for civilization. And even in Boston, where during this pandemic, 95 Massachusetts companies really had a role in either coming up with a diagnostic, a therapy, or ultimately the vaccine that helped this entire world fight COVID, still some people are unaware of what we're doing and how successful we've been. Now, we know that you're not in that camp, and we all know that you have that kind of internal understanding of what this industry does. But we want to make sure we're educating students at the youngest ages, and I think Mass Bioed does a great job of doing that.
Thank you, Senator Boncory. I also wanted to say thank you to Councilor Mejia, to Councilor Braden, Councilor Block, and especially to Councilor Baker, who's been a longtime champion of these educational programs. Councilor Mejia, just in the interest of time, I don't have any further comments or questions for Senator Boncory, but just want to say thank you to Joe for his positive leadership on this issue.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. I also want to note that there's a Kim Tai in the attendees who raised their hands after I asked for William Ashton. So I'm going to assume that they're here to speak on behalf of William Ashton. And if so, can we please let them into the room? And then Senator Boncory will go back with some questions for you, but wanted to just honor the situation of Kim, if you're available and here.
Hey, Counselor, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you. You now have the floor.
Thank you very much, Counselor. I do apologize. Will Ashton was unable to attend and did ask me to speak on behalf of IQHQ today before your committee. So again, my name is Kim Tai. I'm a Director of Development here at IQHQ. And I heard in your introduction that you were curious what IQHQ stands for. It's not an acronym. IQHQ is a real estate investment trust that designs, develops, and manages premier life science and research real estate. In the last 2 years since its inception, IQHQ has begun to actively develop approximately 2 million square feet of life science research buildings in San Diego and approximately 3 million square feet of life science research buildings in Boston and in Cambridge. None of these projects are built to suit for a particular tenant, and instead it's been our experience with the IQHQ team, consistent with the same experience of all other life science industry leaders, that life science and research tenants generally sign leases for space in their buildings no earlier than 12 months prior to completion of their construction and occupancy. So in the last 2 years, again, with the approximately 3 million square feet of buildings in Boston and Cambridge, in particular, we've been working and partnering with the City of Boston as well as the City of Cambridge. And in particular, some of our community partners are Fenway Community Center, the Fenway CDC, as well as Operation Peace and Just a Start. And I can elaborate a little bit further on those programs if you'd like us to, Counselor. And in the past summer, we created a 2021 internship program with the goal to establish a career-oriented internship for local residents and so that they can become acquainted with a structured business environment and hone communication and relationship building skills. They can attend introductions to a variety of career areas, including media and communications, architecture, environmental science, landscape architecture, construction operations. And so that the Participants can work towards a resume and a career path and participate in the community process to align the community needs with IQHQ. And again, more than happy to jump into just what Operation Peace and Just Safe Start do as well, if you'd like.
Thank you, Kim, for that. I'm going to go back to my colleagues now for questions. I'm going to move on next to, I believe, Councillor Baker, just for opening remarks and also for some questions for Senator Boncori before he has to jet off.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to talk a little bit about what Joe had said, the amount of, first of all, thank you for having this hearing, and thank you to my co-sponsors, Flynn, Bach, and Brading. We are the areas, I think, of the city, and not just limited to us, that will probably see the most lab space coming to our districts. And Joe had mentioned the amount of space coming, and also attached that number of 40,000 jobs coming in. And I think in the city of Boston, we talk about critical times. We talk about stepping up to what's happening. This is a time for us to step up here right now. And I think it's going to happen with the partnership between Mass Bio, Mass Bioed, and all the job training heads that we have in this room right here. And Kim had touched on, Kim Tai from IQH2. Kim, congratulations on your job too, by the way. I'm sorry you don't have to talk about encampments anymore, but congratulations. So I think that I think that my focus in the next year or two is going to be, and I've also have tons of conversations on it, something of that apprenticeship program. So we do the training and then lean on the companies to say, we've trained this person up to handle material or to do whatever it is that we can to get people into the industry and then start to learn it from the inside with help from Mass Bio, Mass Bioed. I think that the development community and the companies that are coming in here are going to need to step up and see what they're willing to put up and what they're willing to commit. From what I've heard, that we own the R&D, the research and development, the front end of this, coming up with the patents or coming up with the drugs. Where we're losing is the implementation, the putting those drugs together, or whether if it's technology, we're losing that to other states because we do not have brick and mortar training. We need to set up multiple areas. I mean, in my area alone, down at the Globe, which Joe has been to and Sonny has been to see and kind of come inside my head and where I'm thinking. I think we are going to need multiple job training, brick and mortar spaces within these developments. At the Globe, we're well set up. We have a good space to do it, and that's what we're working towards. So I think the important thing that we need to really focus on is 40,000 jobs in the next couple of years, and none of our people are trained towards it. So this is a real opportunity for us to move into the future and come into communities like my community and train our kids. My concern is if it's just set up with colleges and research people, then it's going to be that MIT, Harvard type of kid that goes in there and is in line for the jobs. I want you to come to Bowdoin Street. I want you to come to Dot Ave. I want you to come to Broadway in South Boston. We need to make sure that the opportunities for the people in Boston, we talked about making sure that the people in Boston are getting these jobs. If we're not fully invested in our resources, like Councilor Braden says that Brighton High has some empty space over there. We need to set up a space over there to start training towards this injury. The Globe is going to have space. We need to, in the Globe, in Brighton, in South Boston, down on the waterfront. And it's going to be, again, like the former senator said, it's going to be partnerships. It's going to be the city of Boston with these developers, with the biotech industry, because they can build the 20 million square feet, but if we don't have a trained staff, they're going to be like the empty office spaces now. So very critical that we're on board here. And I know Tren's here someplace. Tren, I've talked to you for a couple of years about brick and mortar. We need to be able to bring people into spaces. So that's where my attention is going to be. And thank you for holding the hearing here, Terry. And thank you everybody for coming out and lending your voice to this. And I don't have any questions for Joe. I'll hold my questions for later. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Baker. You know, I'm going to move on to my other colleagues, but before I do, I just want to note that if we look around the Zoom, right, like who's here and who's not, I don't see any Black folks up in here, right? I believe I'm the only Latina here. I'm really excited to see Kim and others in terms of, you know, but I just think it's really important as we talk about equity and inclusion and diversity that, you know, even who is not here says a lot about the work that we have to do to ensure, to Councilor Baker's point, to get to Bowdoin Street, to get to Dorchester Ave, to get to other low-income communities. And it's not just around people of color. I'm also thinking about low-income communities, right? Like there are a lot of folks, to Senator Boncory's point, we didn't grow up exposed to the sciences, right? And so low-income communities, you know, most of the jobs that we get exposed to are retail and things of that nature. And so if we're really serious about making sure that no one in the city of Boston gets left out of these conversations, then I think we're going to have to start being more intentional in terms of who are the folks that are even participating in these hearings and what kind of perspective are we bringing into these spaces to ensure that that type of thinking doesn't get left out of these conversations. And while I do appreciate the thought leadership here, I think I'd be remiss as the chair not to call it out, and to notice the fact. I also reached out to some of the folks, Malia Lazu, and some of the other folks who have been doing some work through MIT. BFIT, which is, you know, the Ben Franklin Institute. I know you mentioned it, but I'm just curious in terms of outreach and engagement, the intentionality about making sure that we bring people who understand the lived experiences of those who are of color and low income to these conversations, so that when we do talk about how we're going to increase engagement, we're talking about it from a space of lived experience. And I just kind of want to note that. And I see, Kim, you have your hand up. Not sure if you want to address that point or if I can, if you want to speak to that.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. And those are great points. And I wanted to speak to not only your point, but also Councillor Baker's point as well, in making sure that, you know, it's really important for when IQHQ is partnering with the community, that we're partnering with as many local, you know, groups and organizations as possible. And wanted to specifically thank Councillor Braden for giving us a tour of Brighton High. And with our Alston Brighton project right now, we're looking at 2 fits for lab space in Brighton High itself to make sure that we're giving back to, you know, the local school children in the area. And in addition, we also are in communication with Bunker Hill Community College, just to make sure that, you know, as you said, we are reaching out to all the communities. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Kim. I'm going to go next to Councilor Tren. I thought I already called on you, so I'm just going to go on to Councilor Buck, who's the next person on my list here. Councilor Buck.
Great, thank you so much, Councilor Mejia. And I'm really glad we're having this conversation today. I strongly agree that if, you know, it is, like Councilor Baker said, it's an exciting moment for the city of Boston to have this kind of opportunity for an industry to really grow here from an economic perspective. But when we talk about economic inequality, if we don't harness that growth to provide great jobs for the people in our communities, especially our Black and Brown communities that have much lower incomes and wealth, then that prosperity becomes a driver of inequality. And so I think we all on the Zoom want to see shared prosperity coming out of this. And that means a workforce development pipeline that results in real jobs. And I know like Councilor Baker said, my district is one of the districts. I think all the co-sponsors here represent different districts that are seeing intensive lab square footage development. And one of the things that I have been saying over and over with IQHQ's developing my district and lots of other partners is that we don't just want programs that sort of train and expose. We want programs that train and expose and then actually create a pathway to real jobs. And I think that one of the questions, Joe, Senator Boncory, thank you for joining us, that I have for you is, how do we, one of the things I've been discussing with some of the lab developers is just the fact that we know that in this space, there's going to be constant sort of commercial lab startups, and we're not necessarily going to get to walk the workforce development road with each of those startups independently. We really want a world that they can plug into and be hiring lab techs, hiring folks who are handling materials, hiring just all the, like you said, the whole supportive scaffolding that makes lab development possible. I think, we want sort of the actors who are going to be stable actors to help us create that ecosystem, and then have everybody who's new just be able to plug into it and hire our Boston folks. So, who do you see as the sort of stable players in that? And to what extent do you think it's I guess from a workforce development ecosystem pipeline perspective, if you've got a new lab startup, how do you think it is that we tell them hey, we've got the lab tech talent here for you. Here's where you can hire Bostonians who have been trained, and what is the feedback loop that MassBio is working on to make sure that whatever ecosystem of training programs we have, people are actually learning the things that they need to learn to be competitive for these jobs?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, along with the Life Science Center, Ken Turner over there, along with Councilor Mejia, who serves on the board, we've developed a workforce training council. And the point of this workforce training council is, among other things, to create kind of a standardized curriculum for these entry-level jobs into lab spaces and biomanufacturing spaces. And on balance, I just want to talk about, I had a meeting with North Carolina last week. And the biotech industry around North Carolina. It's interesting to note, I think Councilor Baker said, while we lead in research and development in this industry, 10% of all NIH money comes directly into Boston and Cambridge for development in this industry. We're really the envy of every other state and what we're doing around this industry. But while we're doing that, we're really kind of lagging behind in some kind of biomanufacturing, right? And North Carolina, on it, for example, the state there has a 40,000 square feet lab training facility where they're just training people, biomanufacturing facility, where they're training people to be ready, not just for the jobs in this industry, but the careers in this industry. These aren't just jobs that are seasonal, or these are careers that pay in excess of $100,000 for some of these entry-level positions. So we want to make sure we're doing that. So how are we doing that? To get back to what you said, we're thinking about standardizing a curriculum throughout the states to share with our community colleges, with our technical schools, some of which you have. You have a great asset, I think, in the Boston public school system to think about how to get a curriculum into that system that can train Boston students who are looking for more of a technical experience or a technical job coming out of school. And they'll be way ahead of their peers really across the state and having access to these jobs. So I think this is a great moment in Boston. I know when, just to answer Councilor Mejia's question around, what we're really doing actually in DE&I, we have in MassBio, we have Project On-Ramp, which is an apprenticeship program that places more than 90 students each year into industry, companies that are leaders in the Commonwealth. So, the companies are here, Councilor Bach. We have major players. We have, 19 of the top 20 biotech companies in the entire world right here in Massachusetts. They understand the workforce needs. They understand the investment that needs to be made. What we need is the pipeline, and we're going to help build that. We're going to work with you to build the pipeline of future employees for this industry. And it's a great moment in time. The city. We were talking about 20 million new square feet of lab and manufacturing. Some of that is going to be conversions. We've heard a lot about conversions in the newspapers and on the news, and just generally in any industry piece you pick up. And with 5 million, square feet already in the pipeline to be converted just alone in the city of Boston, from regular office building to lab and biomanufacturing. I really want you to think long and long and hard. We'll think through this with you. But as you get mitigation from these developers around workforce, Think about what's the best use of that money, and think about reinvesting that money into biomanufacturing training facilities, partnering with organizations like Mass Bio and Mass BioEd, and building out those facilities. Because when you think of North Carolina and 40,000 square feet of biomanufacturing training space, we have nothing on scale to match that.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be really important. And I've been saying this to folks, like for us, as you say, to kind of centralize these efforts, because I think a number of us are making good progress on working with developer partners around, hey, could you build some fit out space in your building? And I'd love, Kim, for you to talk a little bit about the Just to Start partnership and sort of what we're thinking about for 109 Brookline and Fenway. But I say that knowing that for us to have a sort of systems approach, like we do need everybody on this call sort of putting their heads together and making sure that we're doing things at scale. And before I go to Kim, I'll just say I do think that one of the things that I appreciate is that in my district, if there's a big building and it's looking for janitorial services, I don't feel like I have to fight with every big building about whether they're going to hire like local folks, including lots of folks of color, and give them great jobs, because like most of the big buildings in my district, hire folks who are signed up with 32 BJ, or if it's like food services with Unite here, Local 26. And I do just want to stress that I think with a lot of these support worlds for lab, it's the same thing where it's like the jobs that are not the science jobs, they need to be good jobs that pay a real living wage in Boston, that have benefits. And it needs to be something that like, we're not leaving for chance or like having a fight with like every lab tenant. And so I just really want to stress that I think like in this town, that's, really thinking about how these turn into a class of good jobs that we can kind of count on. Is really important. And I did just want to say, Councillor Mejia, that to the point of sort of inclusion and who's in the room, I think she's stuck in the attendees, but I know Tarsha is here from Action for Equity and is going to be on the third panel. And I think Action for Equity brings a really important voice, like you say, to this, thinking about speaking on behalf of our Black and Brown communities and what they need in this process. But Kim, I don't know if you could talk a little bit about the Just to Start partnership and that from IQHQ's perspective.
Yes, of course, Councillor Buck. So currently IQHQ is partnering with Just to Start in our Cambridge project, and we're just starting it as well at 109 in Bowdoin. So currently we're, just to back up a little bit, the Just to Start program is really a career training program, and we're partnering that with them not only by sitting on their board as part of their advisory committee, but connecting them to our biomedical network as well. And so that will assist them in their career training programming to empower youth, seniors, and local residents. And that part of it is really creating economic stability through affordable housing and that career training. And that right now we're looking at creating some lab space in Cambridge and working with them. And so we're continuing those discussions with them for the 109 project as well. And in addition, right now, we're also having conversations of connecting Just to Start with Fenway CDC and just seeing how we can facilitate, more like, as you indicated and what other counselors have mentioned, is making sure that not only the job creations that are happening in the local area specifically to life science and research, but all the other jobs that come with a large complex like that will be focused on, local residents as well.
Great. Thanks so much, Kim. Yeah. And my last notes on that would just be one that like from an environment perspective, as well as an economic justice perspective, folks have heard me say, we're building this lab center in Fenway. It cannot be that everyone has to drive to get there. Right. We've got to have local workers who can get there on the T and the bus and on foot. And then I would just say, because Councillor Baker, I think this relates to something you commented on. I mean, one of the things that I've been talking about with the IQHQ folks with that potential fit out space for the Just to Start training is like, we need lab training spaces that have the capacity to be continuously upgraded and a commitment to continuously upgrading them. Because the last thing we want is to build like a state-of-the-art 2021 lab space to train folks on And then there's, new machines and procedures that come into the commercial lab space, and you're sort of like left frozen in time with the training lab space. I think that isn't going to work for this industry. So another thing that we need from people, besides just a commitment to provide space, is sort of a partnership that keeps making sure that, to Senator Boncore's point, we're updating not just the curriculum, but also the sort of like basic training spaces that people have to learn that curriculum. So,
Absolutely, Councilor.
Madam Chair, those were my comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilor Bach. And I'm gonna, before I go to our next speaker, which will be Councilor Braden, I just wanted to just quickly note, Senator Boncore, before we lose you to head off to your next appointment, is that, as we continue to have these conversations, I'm always going to be interested in measurable outcomes, right? Like, I like to see data. How are we doing? The number of folks that we are engaging, some metrics, right? And some accountability around that. And then I think one of the things that I've learned in my work in the workforce development space before I came here is that, oftentimes we'd set people up and we get them in, but we don't retain talent. And I think that that's also part of the conversation in terms of the culture that we're creating within these spaces, so that we can retain talent. And I think that, in order for us to be successful, we're going to have to set ourselves up with accountability measures that we're going to hold the city accountable to, as well as our partners. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on kind of where you are thinking around that accountability factor.
Yeah, it's a good question, Counselor. And just, I guess a month ago, MassBio released its first ever DE&I survey. We had an open letter 2.0 2 years ago. That open letter asked CEOs from the biotech industry to sign on to make a commitment to be more diverse, equitable, and inclusive in the industry. We had almost 300 member companies sign on to this. So we are going to have every 2 years now metrics that come out that really, show or don't show, that our industry is becoming more diverse and more inclusive. We know this has worked. Back in 2017, we put out a survey to our CEOs around kind of gender equity. And what we learned from that survey is that in just 5 years, we were able to improve gender diversity on our board of directors for these companies by 235%. So what that tells me is around DE&I is when companies commit to it and they make that commitment, and it becomes not just an afterthought, oh, we didn't think about this, let's put some programs in place and spend some money. When they make a commitment early on and make it part of that business model, like our companies did with gender diversity, we're going to be a more diverse and more inclusive industry. So I just mentioned that because it's timely. Every 2 years, we will be measuring that outcome, and we're happy to obviously share the metrics with the Boston City Council.
Thank you for that. And one more point to that is that I think when I think about diversity and inclusion and recruitment efforts, it's not just the number of folks that are employed, but what type of jobs and titles they have, right? So I'd like to see these recruitment efforts and the accountability metrics to also look at leadership roles, right? Department heads, folks who are in positions of power and real power, right? Not just a title, but that are real decision makers. I'm just curious about kind of like that sort of effort as well.
Yeah, we have to, we're trying to measure that. And part of the Open Letter 2.0, part of the work that we started doing around DE&I is to measure just that. How many member companies have, people of color, have other people with disabilities, veterans in their C-suites and on their board of directors. So we're beginning to do that the process of parsing that all out. We have our first round of survey information, which is, ties in directly to what some other industries are doing in greater Boston and Massachusetts, like IT. We're pretty much on par with what we're doing. But what separates us as an industry is now that we have metrics that in 2 years, when we do the survey again, we'll be able to reassess and see the growth in the industry. But it does specifically target, getting people of color into C-suites and on boards of directors. directors.
Thank you. And I'm going to go on to one of the other co-sponsors and then go back with some more questions. But Councillor Breeden, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the panelists this morning. It's great to see you. As our office has been in conversation with many of you for many months, and it's good to have actually land on having a hearing where we can all get in the same room, virtually at least. A few questions in terms of just a viable scale for a training facility for our growing biotech industry in Boston. What sort of square footage are we looking at to be a viable sort of scale?
For biomanufacturing, I think it's, I don't have hard numbers on what we would need. I think we'll have to work with our, member companies to kind of decide what their needs are and what the curriculum is going to look like. I would mention, though, again, that North Carolina has a training facility that's 40,000 square feet. They put out more than 200 people into workplace biomanufacturing each and every year through their program. So I think, you can think about scale that way. 40,000 probably gives you about 200 people a year.
Yeah, it seems like you mentioned earlier that I think it was, that you're training like 90 students per year at the moment. It seems Project On-Ramp was turning out 90 students a year.
Correct.
So
but Mass BioEd has, I'm sorry to cut you off.
Go ahead. We really need to think about how, there's so many different baskets. Have we got a sense of how many technicians we're able to train right now?
I think Sunny Schwartz is here. She could probably provide some testimony around that on her panel. So I just want to be clear, 90 students is just the Project On-Ramp program where many who are out of the city of Boston, but Mass Bio has a focus in getting students out of communities that have been historically left behind and introducing them to the industry. But Mass BioEd has an apprenticeship program that, turns out so many projects there's other training programs around the state that are doing, anywhere from 20 to 90 students a year. But we got to think about bringing that all together, I think, and really building a kind of more of a standardized curriculum so we can better assess, and the industry can better assess the amount of students and professionals are coming into the industry each and every year.
Now, the other question I had was with regard to training trainers. Like, I understand that there's actually a shortage of trainers, and it's not, you're not just teaching science, you're teaching industrial practices, and is there a pipeline to develop certify more trainers so that you can scale this up?
Yeah, I mean that's going hand in hand with the work we're doing now to train to think about these curriculums and how to scale them up. Is obviously part of that would be to train up the instructors and professors around these kind of entry-level lab spaces in biomanufacturing. I would say there is that for lab training now. What we need to think about is biomanufacturing, and how to scale, how to build not just that pipeline, but that kind of faculty too.
Okay, and in other industries such as construction, engine, all the other industries, we have a union pipeline for developing apprenticeships. Is there a union pipeline to develop apprenticeships in biotech?
Currently, I'm not aware of any union pipeline that's training workers in the biotech industry.
To what extent is the industry unionized at this point?
I am not. So we don't have really the biomanufacturing that would be on scale with other states that that would lend to that. We have very little biomanufacturing in this state. Again, the industry focus here for so long has been on research and development. But as we build out and scale up the biomanufacturing, we can better assess that.
Okay, and to the point about is Mass Biotech working with or anyone working with Boston Public Schools to work on their science curriculum, or even are you working at the Mass Department of Education to look at their science curriculum to see if it's at least helping prepare students for for this workforce?
Yeah, I mean, we are having those conversations again. You'll hear from Sunny Schwartz later, Mass BioEd, who runs a BioTeach program with schools in and around the Commonwealth and in and around Boston. That she's actually going in with teachers and training the teachers in those schools. A curriculum for younger students.
Okay, so then we're seeing all this a huge development of lab spaces across the city, and in terms of preparing a workforce ready to step up into these jobs, what sort of timeline are we looking at?
So we expect a 20 million square feet of lab space in Greater Boston to be developed in the next 5 years. Okay,
and do you have any idea how many workers we need to support that level of development?
So we think that the biomanufacturing lab is going to take about 40,000 workers. Not all at entry level positions. Some will be trained at 4-year institutions. Some will be trained at MIT and are going to require postdoctorate degrees, but we expect that a portion of those new workers are going to be entry level, and that's a talent line we need to build up. It's unclear we are drilling down into the data now to figure out how much of that workforce is going to be sort of the entry level biomanufacturing or entry level lab space position.
So the other question I have is with regard to career guidance counselors in schools. Are you working with try and educate guidance counselors about these opportunities for our students? Like, there's so many different ways to get out in the world and earn a decent living, and I'm personally very, very excited about the opportunity that this brings to all of our young people across the city of Boston, particularly our young people of color who we're trying to redress the income and wealth gap, and I think these are great pathways into careers that will pay good wages and offer some incredible opportunities. So in terms of I think we have to look at the infrastructure with Boston Public Schools to make sure that our guidance counselors and our schools are thinking about this opportunity.
I think that's a point well taken. That's something we're interested in doing. We have been doing to some extent, but hopefully after a meeting like this, with the counselors we have on there, we can build stronger ties, into the Boston Public School system, and as we all think about this collectively.
Yeah, and so I just wanted to make note that we do have a series of other panelists who need to speak, and I've been very generous with time just because this is such an important issue, but I also want to make note that there is another hearing at 1.
That's good. Madam Chair, I'm happy. I think I realized Senator Boncor was limited on time. I wanted to get my questions answered to him before he disappeared. So thank you very much.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So I'm going to move on to Councillor Murphy, please. You now have the floor.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Councilor Mejia, for holding this meeting. And also heard Boston Public Schools mentioned a lot already. So I do want, for those who don't know, I am the newly sworn in city councilor at large, but previous to this job, I'm an educator and Boston Public School teacher for 25 years. So have a lot to listen and add to this conversation today and also going forward. So also, I know we need to, but how do we make sure our curriculum in the Boston Public Schools is aligned so our Boston kids are prepared for these careers in life sciences? I have to echo our colleague, Councilor Flaherty, who often says, we don't just want our city kids to be the custodians or the receptionists at these life science buildings that we're seeing popping up all around the city. We want to make sure that they're being hired as CEOs and top level management positions. So it's on us as a city to make sure we're getting into the schools and aligning those curriculums. And also, Senator Boncor, I heard you mention a few times already that we have to start early getting in. I think if we're waiting till high school or when our students are at Ben Franklin or Wentworth or Quincy College, it's almost too late. I'm an early educator, so I do know that we need to get in, and this pipeline needs to start in kindergarten, first grade, to make sure that our students know this is a possibility. I know firsthand as a parent, my children are young adults now. So as a parent, I've lived through BPS and also as a teacher for all these years that I've never met, and it's kind of a reflection later that I looked back and realized that any child or a parent I talked to who their child knew they wanted to make a career, which is a wonderful career in the unions, in the trades as a plumber or an electrician, they never thought of or looked at Madison Park as the pathway that they should take. They never said, I'm going to make sure my kid, or I'm going to make sure I get into or go to Madison Park because I want to be a tradesman. So I do think we need to do a better job. And I know Councilor Braden just started to talk about, where is that pipeline and where is that training going to be? So I know that we have to start early. We also have to make sure that we're aligning our curriculum and training our teachers, but also having those spaces across the city. If it's at Madison Park, having life science training or other high schools to really advocate for that. So those are my comments, and I look forward to the conversation and continuing these partnerships moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. Just wondering, Senator Boncory, if there's any comments, thoughts, reflections based on what you heard that you just want to echo. Otherwise, I'd like to give an opportunity to hear from some of our other panelists. And I also want to note that we've been joined by my colleague, Councilor Flaherty.
No, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to come here and testify. I think this is really a great opportunity for the entire city. This is the first conversation I've had with you all, but I can tell you it will not be the last, and we'll continue to build forward together. Thank you so much, Councilor.
Thank you. And before we let you go, just wanted to make sure that Councilor Flaherty, if you have any questions specifically for Senator Boncory, now would be the time before we move on to the rest of our panelists. Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor. Or not. 3, 2, he has left the building. Hey, Senator Boncory, I wanted to just thank you so very much for joining us. We really do appreciate your time, and look forward to the partnership and trust that we will be reaching out. I think that as Councilor Baker mentioned, this is an exciting time. And if we can get this right, we can set the stage and be a national leader in what it really looks like. So really looking forward to that partnership and working alongside you to make it happen. Thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna move on next to our very patient administration panel. Midori, you now have the floor.
Great. Good morning, and thank you, Chairwoman Mejia. Good morning, Councilor Baker, Councilor Buck, Councilor Murphy, and Councilor Braden, and Councilor Flynn. Thank you so much for allowing us to testify on behalf of the administration on workforce development in life sciences. My name is Midori Morikawa, and I'm the Interim Chief of Economic Development for the City of Boston. In January, the Office of Economic Development will welcome our new chief, Segun Ido. He starts as our new Chief of Economic Opportunity and Inclusion. We have been meeting with Segun and shared what we've done across the city. Our collective team here that I have here with me today from Office of Economic Development, Boston Planning Development Agency, and the Office of Workforce Development to really focus on the growth of life sciences and the workforce development challenges and opportunities that many of us and many of you have shared with us today on this hearing. As many of you know, life sciences is an important industry in Massachusetts. Mass Bioed estimates that in 2020, in the state of Massachusetts, 89,000 people were employed by life sciences companies. This number is 69% higher than a decade ago and 4% higher than the year before. And Mass Bioed also estimates up to 20,000 new jobs in the next 4 years between 2021 to 2024.
Midori, can you say that again? How many people are employed? Did you say 89,000?
89,000, yep.
Wow.
In the state of Massachusetts.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, not at all. The BPD Research Division also estimate that in Boston, there are 16,000 life sciences jobs. That number has grown by 38% from 2010 to 2020 over the last 10 years. Burning Glass Technology also showed increases in online biotech job postings over this time period, including a 4.6% increase from 2019 to 2020. So just over a 1 year period, there was about 5% increase in the online biotech job posting. As many of you have mentioned, these are all quality jobs compared to average wages earned in Suffolk County. Life sciences workers tend to earn higher wages. But also in addition to that, these jobs also often require higher education and STEM skills. 80% of life science workers in Suffolk County have obtained a bachelor's degree or higher. We have also heard, many of you have mentioned this to you today, that many of the employers are concerned about their ability to fill these job openings and really ensuring that diversity of the city is reflected in their workforce. So therefore, my colleagues here from BPDA, OWD, and OED have been working together on learning from our life science companies, industry leaders like Senator Bancor, and workforce organizations about their workforce needs, challenges, and opportunities. In addition to life science industry leaders, we have also reviewed and have been in conversation, many of you have already mentioned, with community colleges like Benjamin Franklin Institute of Technology, Bunker Hill Community College, Roxbury Community College, and Quincy College to learn more about the current training programs, curriculum skills taught to prepare students for life science careers. We plan to continue to work with them to learn more about how two-year colleges and certificate programs can create alternative pathways to life science careers. So using what we're learning from our life science leaders, education institutions in this work, with the Office of Workforce Development as the lead, we will be submitting a grant proposal to the U.S. Department of Economic Development Administration, EDA, their American Rescue Good Jobs Challenge. The Biden administration announced the Good Jobs Challenge grant allocating $500 million to collaborate on the skills training systems and programs aimed to get Americans back to work by bringing together employers with hiring needs with training skills that lead workers to good paying jobs. This grant is due at the end of January, so we have been working tirelessly to get going on that. So we're currently working on assistant development and program design grant proposals that will allow us to work closely with industry and education leaders to help establish and develop a regional workforce training system comprising multiple sector partnerships, and to develop the skills training curriculum materials and to secure technical expertise needed to train workers. The goal of this work really is to explore ways to create a workforce training pipeline, which many of you have already mentioned is such a need, that give all Boston residents access to a typically high degree but rapidly growing industry in Boston. So I'll now turn over to Mike Christopher, Director of Development Review at BPDA, to tell you more about how life sciences have grown in Boston. Mike?
Good morning, everyone, and good morning, Madam Chair, and to the other counselors. My name is Michael Christopher. I'm the Director of Development Review at the Boston Planning and Development Agency. I'm joined by my colleagues, Tren Wynn, who's the Director of Workforce Development, and Bex Braun, who is a fellow at the BPA and has been spearheading a lot of this work. I'm going to be very brief. I think for this is very helpful to kind of hear some of the conversation back and forth from the first panel and the subsequent panels that will follow after. I know that I've talked to several of the district counselors, particularly that have large scale development, life science development in their communities, and working closely with them on some of the work that we've been focusing on. And as a result of our first hearing, we've been really exploring 4 areas as it relates to this industry. The first, just, understanding the lab drivers in the life science context, what is driving the demand now and in the near future. Also looking at it from a planning and urban design perspective, among options like locating planning and design guidelines, how should we shape the impact of lab development on the built environment, understanding the current zoning code and how it looks at this industry. And really talking both internally and externally to development firms as well as architectural firms to really understand the life cycle of some of these buildings from a planning and urban design perspective. Midori touched on the workforce development piece that we're really excited about. And I think that's what we should spend a lot of the bulk of this conversation on today. And we are joined by Tren, who is spearheading a lot of that work. And we see it as a huge opportunity. And I think the area that we really see as an opportunity is to get everyone in the room, to the points made by several of the counselors, as well as Joe Boncourt, that, having this broad array of group, both the life science industry from a development perspective, but also an end user. So the companies having the making sure that we have the workforce development training folks at the table, understanding kind of what their needs are, and having the regulators in the room so that we can understand, I think we look at it broadly across the city where there are opportunities, but as we work with the individual projects in the individual areas, what is unique to certain areas that might be an opportunity for some partnerships. And then obviously the bigger things around BPS and some of those broader issues as it relates to the industry. And I know we've talked a lot with Councilor Flynn about this, and this is really about communication and really taking the work that we've been doing, particularly on the regulatory side, and understanding how heavily regulated some of these buildings are, and really, like I said, digging into understanding it more as well, and then coming up with the plan as we transition with the new administration to really get out and have conversations separate and aside from an individual project, but more around just the industry in general, and kind of, yes, there's a lot of different layers to it as we all on this call can understand. So we are, we continue to work on these issues. We are today we're really here to listen, answer questions. And I do want to make sure Tren is a leader in this space on workforce development, not just in Boston, but I'd say across the country. And this is an area that we've really leaned into her and her expertise to really understand, because the Office of Workforce Development brings, the different workforce development training folks together, as well as the employers. How can we use this? And we do feel like this Good Jobs Grant potentially has the opportunity to do that. As it relates to the other points on some of the other stuff we work on, we'd be happy to come back at a further working session and bring some of my colleagues, both in urban design and the zoning department, to discuss some of those things. I think for today, we wanted to focus specifically on workforce development. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Going to go next to our next speaker, Shanice Wallace from Life Tech Industry Manager, OED. You now have the floor.
Hello, everyone. Sorry about that. I was just doing the same work as Midori. I'm part of her team.
Thank you for that. Well, welcome. You're on my list, so I figured I'd call you into the space. But I'm going to move on next to Tren Wynn, Director of Workforce Development.
Hi, hello. Thank you, counselors, and thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Tren Wynn, Office of Workforce Development. I will yield my time to questions, as I know a lot of people will have them. We have experience working with the Metro Boston Skilled Careers in Life Sciences from 2012 to 2016. So we have some best practices, but a lot of lessons and challenges in terms of employer engagement and actual hiring from that project. We also have various experiences working closely on the ground with workforce trainers and 2-year community colleges with associate degrees. There's 9 of them that are on the top list in the state of Massachusetts to work with life sciences skills gap. I'm also joined by many colleagues on this call who are actual experts who are on the ground learning and sharing with me as well. So happy to note our experiences and have offline working groups to really dig into the actual data, and then work and experiences of graduate students in these training programs who don't have a bachelor's degree, and dig into the outcomes and numbers, because at the end of the day, I think all of you would agree with me that you can train workers to death. You can put many resources in, and skilled training for a workforce is only, I would say, 20% of the equation. 80% is strong employer engagement, commitment to quality jobs, and career mobility for these workers. So if we're really serious about changing the field, I think employer engagement and actual hiring and getting down to the nuts and bolts of actual hiring. And welcome, Counselor Erin Murphy on board. Glad to hear you talk about starting early, because at the end of the day, it is a long-term commitment to skills training and career prep at the same time. We can't do it on a 2-week or 3-week boot camp. So happy to answer questions, engage in a dialogue. There's many sectors of life sciences, from training to hiring to retention. So there's a lot of time to talk about that as well offline. So happy to answer questions and be in a working group. Thank you, Counselor.
No, thank you, Tren. We're so incredibly grateful for your leadership and cannot wait to continue working alongside your office in any capacity to support all the amazing work that you're doing. I've been notified that Councilor Baker's office has also asked that Amy Nishman and Tarnisha Green-Williams present in this panel as well. So I'm going to ask for them to be promoted as panelists. And I'll go to Amy Nishman first, and then Tarnisha Green-Williams.
Thanks, Councilor Mejia. Thanks for hosting today. Thank you also to the co-sponsors of this hearing, all of whom I met with individually, Councilors Baker, Councilor Bach, Councilor Braden, and Councilor Flynn. My name is Amy Nishman. I'm the Senior Vice President of Strategy at JVS in Boston, which is a workforce development agency. JVS is a nonprofit, and we currently serve about 12,000 clients in and around Boston. Our strategy is to help people gain the skills that they need to move into and up in the labor force. We spend a lot of time thinking about where the good jobs are, where the quality jobs are, and how to help our clients access them. And so it will surprise no one in this room that we've been thinking a lot about biotech. As we all know, the city is currently undergoing a massive boom in the development of labs and other high-tech manufacturing facilities. Many low and moderate income Boston residents, the people who JVS has served for generations, are not benefiting sufficiently from these jobs or the workforce development opportunities that we could have. This is especially important, as Councilor Bach pointed out, as we're still facing the economic impacts of COVID-19, and many Bostonians are still grappling with no income and job loss from the pandemic. We have a unique opportunity here for Boston residents to directly benefit from the boom in lab development. My biggest fear in seeing the proposed buildings and how many parking spaces there are is that the industry thinks that people are going to need to come from outside the city to work in these facilities, and that doesn't have to be what happens. If we initiate a strategy right now that involves both bringing the employers in, like Tren pointed out, and bringing the job training providers in, we can create the workforce that they need, and Boston residents will be eligible for these jobs. In order to capitalize on this moment and ensure that these economic benefits happen and across the city to all the neighborhoods that need them, we need a citywide strategy that's going to talk about this, which is why it has been such a pleasure to be working with 4 separate city councilors on this initiative. There's plenty of demand among Boston residents for training for these jobs, and there's plenty of demand for quality jobs. The biggest obstacles right now are funding for job training and space to host the job training. JVS is happy to continue to think about these services and connect with the city, and academic institutions like Quincy College, and my colleague Kate Lopshe is here right now to talk about appropriate funding. If the city were to create a program to ensure that some or all of the job training linkage from this new lab development went to the construction and ongoing funding of a biotech job training space, we could make a huge positive and long-term impact for Boston residents. Thank you so much for your time and consideration, and I too am happy to answer questions.
Thank you so much, Amy. So glad that Councilor Baker advocated for you to go on this turn. Lots of great tidbits here to share with our audience who's following along, and looking forward to working alongside you as well. I'm gonna move on to, in the spirit of moving the conversation along, Tarnisha Green-Williams, would love for you to take the floor.
Thank you. And thank you to all the counselors for this opportunity, and thank you to the attendees and other speakers for having an interest in this topic. My name is Tashir Green-Williams, and I am the Jobs Director at Action for Equity. For the last 9 years, Action for Equity and our partner community organizations have been working to connect residents, particularly residents of color, who have been excluded from segregated industries to quality jobs. I'm going to talk about 6 things. I want to share some of what we've done to know what experience and success I'm basing my statements on. I want to point at the scale and timing of the opportunity we are seeing and why a site-by-site approach is not enough. I was asked to comment on how this industry differs from others, either tech work or hospital jobs. I want to provide some information and data on the situation we are seeing and how we have inherited the structural exclusion we see today. What needs to be done and how to do it, what the motives are to make it happen, and what we would see as a success. And we would see success as we need an initiative. But I want to start with a quick look at the motives to make this happen so we can keep an eye on the main point of how we get the results as I speak. Our motives are commitment to quality, diversity, and Boston hiring, in-depth information about the jobs, innovative program designs with new on-ramps and continuing learning and retention after residents are hired. And all the stakeholders, including the community at the planning table, The life science expansion in Boston creates an enormous opportunity for residents to gain access to quality jobs. If we start now, we have the time for residents to explore these opportunities and gain the skills needed. For now, as of now, our residents, notably excluded residents of color, do not know enough about the jobs to take the steps on their own. We have the time and funding to develop programs to impact our city on a large enough scale. It's not enough to say to employers, hire Boston residents. There must be a coordinated program, a program that starts where the underemployed adults are today and creates the on-ramp for career changers who want to bring the skills they have to higher quality positions. To create the initiative needed to achieve our shared goal, we need an approach coordinated across locations, developers, employers, and training providers with civic and community leadership. We have sent an information request to the City of Boston and the BPDA, and will provide it to you as a starting place. Over decades, we have worked to make our neighborhoods vibrant, strong, and healthy, to have the transportation, housing, and other services and amenities we need. We have encouraged our children, our families, and friends to go to school and to stay in school to create the lives we want. We have supported each other. Now we're seeing an entirely massive and growing economic engine in Greater Boston and Massachusetts that we are excluded from. We need access to those quality jobs to survive in our neighborhoods and if our communities as we know them are to survive. Starting in 2013, our Casino Action Network, now the Jobs Action Network, working with the Gaming Commission, won quality standards and Encore's license, and then diversity standards and local hiring standards were voted in the workforce plan. So many lessons came from that experience, but here are two. First, residents don't know what the jobs were like, even basic things like what were the wages, and they didn't trust the casino would hire them. They were disconnected and didn't know that the opportunities were even there. They needed information and commitments. We reached out to over 2,000 residents and estimate that over 800 people were hired into quality jobs that they wouldn't have been otherwise. Statewide, 300,000 to 400,000 workers will need to transition to different occupations or even new occupational categories throughout the next decade. So how are we going to make this happen so that our excluded residents are not left behind again? This is not a supply chain problem. This is a supply chain problem, but not with nuts and bolts, but with people as the parts. People need to be part of solving the problem. We are also seeing tremendous employer commitment and innovation. For example, a large employer said to us, it's not plug and play anymore, but if we don't ask for a BA, what should we be asking for? Another said they were looking for the least amount of skills that would allow someone to continue learning. There are 4 million square feet of lab space being planned in Alston, another 4 million square feet of development at Dorchester Bay City. Ginkgo's new building has been approved. Rezoning is occurring at buildings like 17 Bradston, where developers are offering training space. Nubian Square Ascends is being planned for a training facility, and lots of healthcare institutions are expanding their research and development. The Glover's Corner land is owned by the same interests that hold a large portion of Kendall Square. And then there's the C part. It goes on and on. If this is all built out, it would be tens of thousands of jobs. So we are seeing discussions of community benefits at each location with a focus on training spaces. But if we don't start the training until the building's open, it'll be too late for people to learn what they need to know to get the jobs. And when the expansion happens, people will be left out. Where is the supply chain planning so that excluded residents have a chance at these opportunities? We were asked how life science pathways compared to those in tech and hospitals. It's a really interesting question. Tech goes everywhere. We find employers want to hire to know something about, all hires that know something about their industry to do tech work, whether it's data analysis or coding or maintaining the system. So tech isn't everywhere. Hospitals have a bifurcated internal labor market with low wages and better wage jobs. As a result, we can't find any internal pathways to get from the bottom wages to the top wages. And most employers do not hire in bulk. We see life sciences having an array of jobs available in pharmaceutical manufacturing, data analysis, trial administration, facility management, and an array of other jobs. We're focused on the opportunity of economic development for BIPOC residents through creating access to quality jobs that are currently segregated. We are focused on today's underemployed adults and creating on-ramps for career changers who want to bring the skills they have to quality higher employment. Right now, we see a focus on youth, and that is extremely important, but it is not enough. We can't focus on young people as the only solution. The under 140,000 working adults in Dorchester, Mattapan, Roxbury, and Hyde Park should not be left behind for the sake of their families and for youth. Youth look to adults to see if opportunities are real. And I'm gonna skip ahead because I know we're at time.
I was gonna encourage you to, I wanna give you the floor, but then I would not be fair, but I do need to have you wrap it up in like 30 seconds. Okay, thanks.
So the program, we feel that there are 4 motors that need things that need to happen. I'm sorry, 5 things that need to happen in order to make this possible. One is a clear income goal on any public investments on income on day 1. Diversity and local hiring standards on the targeted positions. Stakeholders can come together and make it happen if there's a real commitment on the DEI and local hiring by everyone. And in-depth information on specific positions, what are the underlying skills, requirements, learn and earn models, who trains for the positions, how do people get the jobs, innovative program design with new on-ramps and continuing learning and retention after people are hired. We know employers need support. So what are the best practices for learn and earn models and hiring residents into these positions, and a network of partners and community at the table with who have relationships with residents so that they can be engaged in the process and so that their voice is heard. And the rest of my information, I will actually put it in writing and send it in to you all to add it to the comments. And I just want to thank you all for the opportunity. And I know I've met with some of the counselors, but we're looking forward to meeting with others to actually talk more in depth about this opportunity and this short time window we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so very much, Janice. I really do appreciate all of the insight. And you literally gave us our marching orders. You laid it out. So thank you for all of that. I know that I've just been informed that Liz Zulik has a hard stop at 11:45. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you some time to share your remarks, and we're going to start with questions with you. So our colleagues can at the very least ask you some questions. Okay? So
great. Thank you so much, counselors, and thank you, Counselor Maya, for having me today and for really kind of, I think, critically having us all reflect on the fact that we don't necessarily have the voices of the people who would potentially be benefiting from this at the table, and kind of really thinking critically about how to make this group reflect that is something that has been resonating with me throughout this conversation. But today I'm here to share some of the exciting work that Northeastern is doing in this space. And a lot of the work we're doing is actually in partnership with the other people who are speaking today. We partner with, for example, Mass Bio and Mass Bioed to be the educational provider on the apprenticeship program. On the biomanufacturing program, learners actually come through Northeastern currently to do the educational training component of it. And someone who completes that apprenticeship program has the opportunity to basically receive credit for that training program towards a degree at Northeastern University. So it's a way for us to actually create an on-ramp, an accessible way for people to have access to a Northeastern degree. We also have what's called an associate's to master's degree program, where we work with local community colleges, including Roxbury Community College, Bunker Hill Community College, Quincy College, Middlesex Community College, north of the city, to create what we call A2M. So students get their associate's degree in biotech, then they can come to us to get their bachelor's degree and go on to get a master's degree in one additional year. All these programs are offered at or online and have a lower tuition price point than the traditional Northeastern programs that people are familiar with. We have an Nsf grant that helps to support this program. So right now the out-of-pocket cost to a learner going through the A2M path is $0. This program is over 70% non-white learners, 68% first generation, and 77% female learners with over a 90% retention rate. So this is a fantastic opportunity for us to increase the educational pipeline. Like I said, the program's at night and online to allow people to work while they're getting their degree. This program is around, if you're not part of this pathway, which you have to be Pell eligible in order to qualify for, the out-of-pocket cost is still close to around $5,000 per year. And we try to partner with industry in order to use tuition reimbursement benefits to make education accessible for these learners. Finally, I just wanted to highlight another way we're engaging is we have been involved in a Build Back Better EDA grant that has been moved to phase 2. We heard this morning about that exciting thing, and it really does focus on biomanufacturing in the New England region and really thinking about how we can create a new generation of workers who benefit from the region's biomanufacturing cluster. The coalition proposes a number of interventions and on-ramp into the biotechnology sector for individuals without a 4-year college degree to secure a stable, high-quality biomanufacturing job. So in that partnership, again, we're working with community colleges, workforce development organizations, different industry partners in order to bring that to life. And finally, we do a little bit of work I know we have some people who are involved in the BPS system with the Burke in Dorchester. Carl Reed is a fantastic educator there who does a little bit he has a biotechnology course that he offers to learners there as another way to kind of expose the local BPS learners to the job opportunities. We host them on Northeastern every year to think about other pathways to a degree. So I just wanted to share some of the things that we're doing at Northeastern to try to be additive to the bioeconomy that's here in Massachusetts and really to create on-ramps for the residents of Boston. I know that we're talking about the beat earlier in conversations of how we can be part of that space. So really looking forward to how we can contribute. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. In the interest of time, I know you have 15 minutes with us, so we'd love if our colleagues can, your first round of questions be directed to Liz. That would be great, and then we'll move on to the rest of our panelists. So Councilor Baker, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Liz. I don't have any questions for you in particular. I think we're coming out to see your space. Are you in Burlington, Liz?
Yeah, I work closely with Jared Leclerc, who mentioned, so we have a facility in Burlington that acts as a biomanufacturing training facility. That's where we actually host our Mass Bioed apprenticeships students. But yeah. I think thinking about an opportunity to do something here in the city of Boston that's accessible is really exciting to me. And I think it's shared by a lot of the other people who presented today. And even thinking about like JBS, for example, who a lot of students end up going to Quincy College and then they end up coming to us, right? So it's like, how can we create something that works for this whole ecosystem?
Yeah, so I think we're going to try and come out to see you on Friday. I'll let people know if we are going to go out there and see your space. And my only real question I have, thank everybody for coming, was to Amy. Amy, you said there were two things that we need to do, and one was, and I totally agree with you, we need to create the spaces. And what was the second thing, Amy?
We need to invest in job training, but Liz shared and what Kate will share is and Sunny will share, there are very effective biotech training programs now, and we're going to need more of them to get to the scale that we need to solve this problem.
Yeah. So Joe had talked about North Carolina. They have a 40,000 square foot training facility that's attached to, say, the way it was explained to me, say they're Kendall Square. I think our model would be, you know, X amount of square feet near the beat for that area that's going to be built out. It's the beat. It's going to be the UMass site. We had talked about Glover's Corner earlier, which Gerald Chan doesn't own all of Glover's Corner. He owns a smaller piece of it, but also so if I got 15,000 square feet in my district, if Liz got 15,000 square feet in her district, and if Kenzie got 15,000 square feet in her district, I think that would, and then also Eddie down the seaport. I think that's the way we go at it. We do multiple spaces. And Tren, I've talked to you for as long as I've been on the Jobs Trust. I think the money needs to stay with the developments, and if the developers can give us space and then money that kind of along the lines of what we did with Mike, the elderly housing we did down at Mary Ellen McCormick. It was the mitigation money or the IDP money that went front loaded to build that building. It's the same sort of thing. If the beat put $1 million into our Jobs Trust, $2 a square foot. It was about $1 million, probably a little bit more. I'm looking to keep those monies within the developments and build out the spaces that way. So that's just a thought, something that I'm going to be talking about. The money needs to stay together and go towards real programming instead of being cut up into smaller grants. I think we should still be doing those smaller grants, but we need to keep this development money together and put it towards a shared goal of spaces that we're training in. So that's just my little bit. And thank you for chairing this here, Councilor Mejia. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilor Baker. I'm just going to go on to the round of my other colleagues. Councilor Flynn, any questions for our previous panelists?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Councilor Mejia. And want to say thank you to Amy. I've been to the site in downtown Boston, Jewish Vocational Center. It's outstanding. So the question I had is for Liz at Northeastern. I'm glad you mentioned Bunker Hill Community College. I'm glad you mentioned Roxbury Community College. They play a critical role in our city. They have a presence in my neighborhood, but in many people's district. A lot of immigrants, a lot of women, a lot of communities of color, students there. Tell me about the associate's program and then going into Northeastern, possibly getting your bachelor's degree. Are we able to make sure that any student that wants to go to community college in life sciences has an opportunity to go to Northeastern, even if they are not able to pay for it? That's what I'm concerned with. I want to make sure kids that come from poor backgrounds, and if they have the drive and they want to get in this field, that we can get them in this field regardless of ability to pay. What are you guys doing, Liz?
Yeah, so I think this type of pathway where we work with a community college partner, which is in most cases the most affordable opportunity for a learner to get an associate's degree, I think that's critical. We have fantastic programs. I was actually at the Roxbury Community College board meeting this morning talking about the program. And what I think the most critical problem with these programs or opportunity for growth is that there's just not high enrollments. We're not doing a good job of educating the community about these amazing jobs and pathways for learners, and thinking about how we can get learners in the door at our community college partners, because the Bunker Hill program and the RCC program, for example, are small. They're graduating a handful of learners a year. Those are the programs that should be having people clawing to get in because of how they're aligned with fantastic job opportunities. So that's just an aside. I'm going to go back and answer your question. Once a learner comes to Northeastern, we offer basically need-based financial support. So we cover up to $15,000 in the cost of, it's $30,000 out of pocket for the last 2 years with us. We do a $15,000 scholarship if someone has high need, which is the type of learner you're talking about. Add in Pell eligibility, which would cover, if someone's fully Pell eligible, around $6,000 a year, the out-of-pocket cost would be brought down to zero. That being said, we have learners who use up their Pell eligibility. We have people who are high need but are not fully Pell eligible. The other thing that we're doing is working on building out learn and earn programs. It's a program that was invested in at Middlesex Community College via the 1-8 Foundation. And how it works is basically industry partners, similar to an apprenticeship program, say, we're going to basically hire you as a full-time employee, and you're going to be a part-time learner, and we're going to have a tuition reimbursement benefit that will help pay for the cost of education. Northeastern's known for its co-op, which is great for someone who can take 6 months off of whatever they're doing and commit to a job. It does not work for an adult learner. It does not work for a non-traditional learner who doesn't have the means. So we're building out a new educational model to support a learner who needs funding, full support of funding while they're in school.
Thank you, Liz. In the interest of time, Councilor Mejia, I don't have any follow-up questions. I just want to stress the important role community colleges play in this debate. Roxbury Community College, Bunker Hill Community College, they're excellent. In my opinion, they're better than Harvard. And we need to make sure that kids that go to these schools get an associate's degree and also have the ability to get into a bachelor's degree as well. Thank you, Councilor Mejia.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. I do want to keep our conversation moving. Before I call my next colleague, and before we lose you, Liz, I'm just curious if you've ever done any assessments or surveys in terms of what prevents young people from pursuing this pathway, because I think the more informed we are as to why our young people and low-income folks and people of color are not pursuing this as a viable career. Just curious if you've ever done any assessments or surveys or focus groups, because I think when we know what we don't know, then we are able to better address, these efforts. I'm just curious, what efforts have you made in that space?
Yeah, so we've performed our own focus groups, and we've also looked at research and some of the other, information that's been put out by some of my colleagues here. And a lot of it is a lack of knowing that the opportunity is there. I always say, I'm like, we need a really good PR campaign. People think, oh, I want to grow up and I want to be a doctor and a lawyer. They don't think, oh, I want to go work in biomanufacturing, right? These old kind of habits of these are the career paths that are out there still exist. And for a lot of people, they don't know someone who's in this space. They haven't seen someone from their own community be successful in this space. So it's hard to get that buy-in that I think would allow, I always say it's like one person. When we actually started building out this pathway, we had one learner who we kept bringing back to the community and saying, look how successful this person is. Look how successful this person is. And it took kind of this trust and buy-in over time to get people convinced that there was an opportunity here. But there was just this lack of general awareness that existed, that these careers existed, in a trust that the system would support them in doing it. So I think and I know a lot of people, like Senator Boncory presented on this as well, but how can we kind of start this early and often dialogue around these are communities that are in your backyard that are accessible to you, that we are supporting you in this pathway. I think more work just needs to be done in order to raise that general awareness that, even me growing up, I did not know what biotech was, right? I mean, and I'm in this space, but it's still mysterious to most people.
Thank you for that. Tren, I see your hand up, but I wanted to see if any of my colleagues had any questions specifically for Liz before we lose her in the next 5 minutes. So I'm just I'll just wanted to acknowledge you, Tren, that I see your hand up, and I'll get to you in a minute. But wanted to know if any of my colleagues, if you have any specific questions for Liz, if you could raise your hand so I can make sure that you get to them. I believe the next person on deck here is Councilor Breeden. Do you have any questions for our panelists or Liz in particular?
No, thank you, Liz. We've met with Liz before this meeting, so I really appreciate. I think the critical aspect is just building up to scale our programs in our community colleges so that they are. And the other critical piece, I think, is just really good guidance, career guidance in schools, so that we familiarize our students and our general population as well with these career opportunities, and just to build a pipeline and a demand to get into the pipeline, so that. And I also, one concern I have is that we can't wait until the lab facilities are built to do this. We need to have our workforce working, getting their skills set together, so that when these labs come online in 2 years or whenever, that this workforce is ready to go. And I share the concern about, this huge number of people who are going to be commuting. That notion that the workforce is going to come in from outside the city is sort of so counter to all of our objectives with regard to raising up our communities in the city, but also our climate and environmental goals as well. So thank you, Liz. I'm sure we'll be in touch offline. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Breeden. Curious, next we have Councillor Bach.
Thank you, Councillor Mejia. I think I'm all right with questions for Liz. My real burning question kind of on what Liz was talking about was to Tren, just about, I mean, she mentioned the fact, like, we don't want to build ladders to nowhere. We want to make sure that people actually have jobs. I think often people, like, I think that Liz is right about the example of one person, but I also think that often people are being extremely rational in deciding not to spend their time and potentially their money, right? Like, pursuing a bridge that might not lead anywhere. So I think, like, you know, the onus is on us to really make sure that we've got, like, you know, hiring pledges and stuff. And so I would love, when it's the appropriate time, to hear from Tren a little bit about that, because to me, that's really the big question here.
I agree. And that's the ask we're going to our industry partners with, is the guaranteed hire for these students to de-risk the pathway for the learner.
And I think that there should be some accountability to that, Liz. I mean, I think that people make commitments, but I think where we fall short is the implementation of those commitments. And so what I'd like to see is some accountability around what this pathway looks like. And I feel like we have all of these great things in place, but we always fall short in that accountability piece of it. And so there needs to be that connection there.
Agreed. And I think you made a comment earlier too, that this ability to be promoted and to gain, it's not just this entry-level job that goes to nowhere, you know, where's kind of the full career path that's in front of these learners? And how are you, an industry partner, setting yourself up to actually be supportive of a non-traditional learner coming into a job there? You might need more support or mentoring or guidance than maybe someone who's coming from a more traditional pathway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm going to go next to Councillor Murphy, just because I want to keep, I know, Tren, you had your hand up. So before I do that, I just want to acknowledge you.
Thank you. Just quickly, I agree with all the training pipelines. We've done it before. We've had experience with it. We know how to do it. The key is that if you look at the employer hiring, the number is extremely small. If you look from these training programs and associate degrees from these non-community colleges are the top two-year colleges that are producing graduates in the life sciences, the hiring results of these graduates are very small. We've seen numbers and hiring performances from the life sciences employers, and they're very small. And so I don't want to be critical about training pipelines and racial equity in the field, but we need to have employer engagement with either conditional or hardcore commitments and follow up long-term to actual hiring. Thank you.
Thank you, Tren. I'd love to, Councillor Murphy, you now have the floor.
Thank you. No specific questions, but just want to say that, you know, I feel that, you know, very positive, hopeful that with all the panelists on this call that we can really make a difference here, but understanding it's very time sensitive. And thank you, Tren, for your comment. Looking at the data is something I'm coming on new. I know my other colleagues have been working on this for much longer than me, but really seeing like the results, and you already said the hiring results from some of the job training pathways that we're putting kids on is not what we want to see, right? So looking forward to doing that work and alongside my colleagues and these panelists. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. I just have one quick question. Maybe Michael or someone else here can answer it. I'm just curious about long-term planning here as we continue to have these conversations. And while this is focusing on the workforce, I'm just curious, you know, while we try to ensure that many of these biotech jobs go to Boston residents, a large number of these jobs are going to go to hiring from around the country and even around the world, who will be moving into the city based, as you heard from my other colleagues. So I'm just curious, how are we thinking about this from the perspective of displacement here in the city of Boston? Like, these sort of things go hand in hand. And I'm just curious about how we are moving to get ahead of that.
So, I mean, it's a, so in the sense of how are we kind of matching some of our housing goals with some of the economic growth we're seeing relative to the industry? Is that the question?
Absolutely, and thank you for the translation. You got it dead on.
No, it's a point that Councilor Breeden has been very adamant about when you're introducing some of these, you know, this abundance of jobs. Is your housing pipeline keeping up with the overall kind of goals that we've imagined in Housing Boston 2030, which really look at all different sectors. I think this industry definitely presents new information to that plan, and you know, we have a very aggressive Housing Boston goal. And I think we need to, when we have an industry like this that is, you know, it's been here, but it's literally exploding right now. And, you know, it looks like it's going to have a long build out. We need to continue to kind of see how that factors into our housing. I think it's something that's been brought up and we're still working through it as it relates to kind of how much impact that is. I think we have been, what we've seen in this last real estate cycle, it has been very housing focused. This last 7 to 10 years has been very housing focused. Commercial development's done well, but housing has far outpaced the what is being built. What we're seeing now after COVID is that we're actually seeing a huge uptick in this life science, and the housing has started to drop, and we're trying to look to better understand that. So I think it's a good point. I don't have a definitive answer how we get at it, but I think it's something that Chief Dillon and the new administration will be super focused in as they, you know, not just looking at it from an economic development standpoint, but also, you know, a housing standpoint, and making sure that, you know, we know that we can create synergy in the sense of trying to take, you know, whether it's economic development from, you know, linkage money, and try to partner it up with either an on-site affordable housing development or something close by. So there's definitely some of that happening, but broadly, I think it's something we just need to have front and center.
So I'm just curious in terms of just overall planning and development, what opportunities exist, Michael, to really think about workforce development housing, right? Thinking about this as developing the pipeline with some very specific workforce, you know, apartments being earmarked for BPS students, like that type of level of thinking to ensure, you know, we're always talking about equity, but I think that sometimes we need to think about the infrastructure for what that would look like. And I'm just curious if there's any opportunities to explore that.
I mean, we're always open to different conversations relative to how, you know, we have the current inclusionary development plan that, you know, I know that there's been a lot of folks that are looking at that to see how we can make that more robust. And I think when you look at that, is there a way to tie it to some of this workforce development? You know, we have workforce development housing. All of it is deed restricted. It is all further. It's regulated by fair housing. So there is certain things that you can do with fair housing, and there's certain things you can't, that it presents some challenges. But I think this is an opportunity. I think the one thing we've seen, particularly in Council Breeden's district, is say if you have a life science developer and they're proposing an all life science building and they have, you know, 1.5 acres land. What we've seen some different proposals, particularly at the council's kind of push, is could you take some of your land and actually create housing there at lower AMIs, so maybe some rental housing, and subsidize it with cross subsidize it with your life science building. And it's a newer concept, but there's definitely, I think the council could speak to that. There's definitely some synergy there. It presents some challenges. Life science developers tend to be life science developers. They don't tend to be residential developers, but when pushed, I think we're finding that there is the potential for opportunity. So those are the type of things that we're really seeing right now. And, you know, as we kind of work through these next phase of it, I think it's really being open to any and all ideas relative to making sure that we're not just planning for an industry relative to growing our tax base, and kind of the economic standing of the region. It's about, you know, getting into the equity of this industry and really seeing how we can have a trickle down effect from jobs and housing.
Thank you for that. And I want to just also be super mindful of time. We do have a hearing at 1, and we would like to give central staff some time in between those 2 hearings. So I'm going to move on to our third and last panel. And I'd like our colleagues, you know, just to be super mindful of, I'm going to actually start doing the timer just so that we can keep the conversation going and make sure that everybody has their time here in the space. So I'm moving on to the third panel. And with that, would like to invite Sunny Schwartz, who is the Chief Executive Officer, I believe, from Mass Biotechnology Education Foundation. Sunny, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Chair Mejia, and thank you to the counselors who sponsored today's hearing, Counselor Baker, Flynn, Breeden, and Bach, and also hello and congratulations to Counselor Murphy. I'm excited to be here today. I don't want to talk too long. Like Tren, I'd rather have a dialogue with you all. I will mention just 2 programs that Mass Bioed does that are right in line with what's being talked about today. So our mission as a nonprofit is to develop the life sciences workforce. That's what we do. So many of the colleagues and partners we work with, you've already heard from. In order to fill these 20,000 to 40,000 new jobs coming up for the biotech industry and to give Boston residents access to these jobs, there's a lot of work ahead of us. And I think this is a great conversation to have, and we're happy to follow up with everyone here. Just to mention kind of 2 areas that we're working in, our BioTeach program, which Joe Boncory mentioned. We're actually in the middle and high schools, and Counselor Flynn, we're not in the lower grades, but that's something we could explore. I know you're interested in that. But with this program, we're training teachers in how to lead authentic biotechnology labs with their students. And the idea here is that if students do science, they'd be more likely to think of themselves as a scientist. In addition to doing the science, we want them to know about life sciences careers. As you heard from Liz from Northeastern, people don't know about these careers. So we want to bring students to biotech companies and bring life sciences professionals into the classrooms so that students hear about what these great jobs are. So that's our BioTeach program. The second program is one we piloted this year, which is a life sciences apprenticeship program. This is one of the first registered apprenticeship programs in life sciences in the nation. You hear apprenticeship a lot. This is a registered apprenticeship with the Commonwealth. Therefore, it's eligible for public funds for related training instruction. In the first 2 occupations we're training in are biomanufacturing technicians and clinical trial associates. And I've been working in workforce development a long time in the state, and this program has the most employer engagement I've ever seen in a workforce development program. So the employers are actually hiring people before they start the training so that when someone finishes, they know exactly which company they're going to. And the employers are paying for the training and paying a stipend for the students while they're in training. We piloted it this year with 30 apprentices. We plan to grow it in future years, and I'm really excited to report that 63% of the apprentices this year are women and 60% are people of color. And I'm most interested in a dialogue, so I just want to address a couple of questions that came up from the counselors earlier. So Counselor Bach, you asked a really good question about how startups would know about jobs in the life sciences and would know where to hire, find people to hire. And unfortunately, right now, there's not a great mechanism in the city to do that. And that's what we want to change. And that's why we've been talking to Counselor Baker about putting a site right at the beat. We've been talking to Lincoln Properties about getting into Parcel H in the Seaport so that we can offer services directly in the city to Boston residents so they do know about these great jobs. So we'd love to do that. What we need is resources and staff to do it. We know how to do it. But we need to do a better job on that. And Counselor Breeden, you asked about how much square footage was needed for lab space. It depends on a lot of factors. I would say minimum, you need 2,500 square feet. It depends on what other services are being offered in that building. You also asked about, are we working with guidance counselors? And it's the same answer. We need to be doing more there. We need help to reach those guidance counselors. They're a really great resource. So, and to Tren's point, lastly, about the companies are hiring a small number of Boston residents, that is something that we need to change. So we need to add more services in the city of Boston so that residents know about these jobs. And also they're getting the training and access and networking and all of those services so that they can access these jobs. And I'm happy to talk with anyone here today or after today about how we can do better on this for the City of Boston residents.
Thank you so very much. I'm gonna move on next to, where am I at here? We have so many great speakers. I believe it's Laura Rubin, the Dean of STEM at Bunker Hill Community College. You now have the floor.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all the counselors for having us today. A lot of what I'm going to send in my prepared testimony, but a lot of what I have written has already been introduced, and I want to just reinforce some of the major points that I've heard today in the interest of time. Bunker Hill offers associate degrees and certificates, and primarily we work in, we have programs in life sciences, biotechnology, and biomedical engineering. Our programs are really geared towards transfer, and they're anchored with learn and earn internships and undergraduate research experience opportunities. Many of our students really, they do intern with biotech companies in the area, Merck, BioNTech, Vertex, and others. And we send them to work with research faculty at the UMass's, Northeastern. We work closely with Liz, Harvard, MIT, and others. We're the largest community college, most affordable and accessible community college in Massachusetts, and we're a highly diverse and welcoming institution to all the residents of Greater Boston. To Tren's earlier point, the community colleges have a long history of collaborating with the biotechnology industry. We've shared curricula with them, taken feedback, and focused on skills needed for grads to really thrive in entry-level technician positions. We haven't necessarily moved the needle on hiring practices, though, and this is it's really a struggle for us, especially as we think about how to scale up and how to really strongly embrace an equity mindset in how hiring practices are going forward. So I want to reinforce that we need essentially three things to happen. We need help demystifying the industry. It's a great time and opportunity now that people are really talking about vaccines and viruses and how these things work. The biotechnology industry has to be present in the community. This is really important in order to encourage people from the community who've especially been hardest hit in the last few years, particularly around the COVID-19 pandemic, to get people seeing themselves in the industry. Everybody goes to doctor's offices, everybody goes to hospitals. People don't go to science labs. They need to see scientists in order to be scientists. We use a mentorship program at BHCC that's really been successful, but again, it's too late. Not that it's too late, but it's later in the pipeline than we would like. We really want to see that happening earlier. Second, we need significantly more entry-level opportunities made available to the associate degree grads and the certificate holders. Without this, we will not see an increase in the diverse workforce that biotech is really looking for. And third, once grads are hired, we really need increased employer commitment to financially and structurally supporting their employees to continue their learning, acquire the baccalaureate degree and the master's degree so that we can increase racial and gender diversity at the higher levels in the industry to leadership positions and to really maintain the workforce staying power past just the entry-level positions. So anything the city can do to encourage the biotechnology industry to partner with us to scale up numbers with internships, on-the-job training, mentorship programs, and tuition support for continued education would be great. A commitment to hire the certificate and associate degree earners. This is really critical for us. People need a pathway to sustaining wage that doesn't take an extraordinary long amount of time. And if they could work with us to create a regionally recognized skill certificate, something that's non-credit that could be applied to the workforce training groups that are doing training programs and to people who acquire skills prior to their degree credentials so that it gives them a pathway to employment that directly benefits them in their salary and staying power. These are the areas where I think we could really make progress towards increasing that number of skilled, diverse workers that the industry needs. So I'll send the rest.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. And last, but definitely not least, I believe we have our one more panel who is looking here. I believe it's Kate, from the Director of Workforce Development at Quincy College. You now have the floor.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, everyone. My name is Kate Lopchi. I'm the Associate Vice President here at Quincy College. For some of you, Quincy College has been a public institution that we serve almost like 3,500 students. 50% of those students are coming from Boston and other areas. And so one of the programs that we really want to emphasize today is the Biotech program, in partnership with multiple, agencies in the biotech field, as well as with our crucial partner agency that I should say, Jewish Vocational Services. This program has been very successful. We have a biotech certificate program and we have an associate degree program. Biotech certificate is running a whole year, which allows students to attend from September through June with the outcome that they will get jobs towards the completion. Both programs have been very successful. We have a 90% retention rate. We have a 90% graduation rate, but as well as a higher placement rate. And so it's growing. Both programs are growing. And so one of the needs that we have seen right now is that our waiting list is growing, but the services to provide to students, specifically low-income, underserved immigrants, single parents, I should say, we cannot afford because our capacity is very small due to the lab space. We have got funding through the National Science Foundation that we have developed a 3D training that allows outside the South Shore, the city of Boston, students to attend this while not being present in a classroom. And so that has been very successful, but not only in reference to teaching their basic biotechnology skills, but as well as advanced skills. We created non-credit programs short-term for industry partners through our advisory board, again, in partnership with Jewish Vocational Services to provide career advancement for biotech employees in order for them to kind of move up the ladder. And so we have not only the technician level, but we have advanced level as well. And so that has been very successful here at Quincy College. We do have partnership and articulation agreements with higher ed institutions. So therefore, once our students are completing associate degree, they move up onto at 4-year schools, but as well as dual enrollment with high schools that kids are sort of like engaged in STEM and biotech while they are in a grade 10, 11, and 12 and receiving college credentials as well. So once they finish the high school, they do receive the biotech credentials. So one of the needs that we would say from our end here is that we are definitely in need for some spaces to train Boston residents. We know that the public transportation here, there is not an issue because it's next to the public transportation, but if we would have in the center of the city, we definitely would serve more students that are currently on our waiting list right now.
Thank you so much, Kate. Really do appreciate that. I'm going to open it up to my colleagues for questions. I'm going to go first with Councillor Baker. You now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make a couple points here. I think the best line we've heard today was from Laura talking about demystifying the industry. We have to figure out the jobs, and that's how we figure out the pathway, and that's how we figure out how to train towards those jobs. I think we have the willingness here. I think we all understand the urgency of what we need to do. And again, it's going to be in spaces. It's brick and mortar. I like the model of the certificates, multiple certificates in training. And then I think it was Jared from Northeastern talked about a badge. That one badge that you have shows all your certificates, and like they do Liz in Ireland, it's an apprenticeship program. Get in with the certificates, and then it's on the company to grow that person's skill set. But I think we help in the beginning with the certificates. Of course, you're going to have people that will have their doctorates and all that. They won't have a problem finding a job. It's the kids that are on our streets, kids and young people, and even middle-aged people that are looking to change their direction. If we're able to set up a real certificate program that's 10 weeks, 15 weeks, and you can do multiple certificates, and that's how you get in the door. And it's also exposing people to these jobs. I was very deliberate in when we were planning the Globe. I wanted to make sure that the Globe, the main entrance way especially, was open to the public so people can come in and see the space. If we're not exposing people to this industry, we're never going to get anyone a job. So it's about, and we had also talked about, people know doctors, they go into, and I think it was you, Laura, also. We know the doctors, we know what they do. We don't know what the scientists do, and we don't know when we talk about manufacturing of drugs, like what does that mean? Or manufacturing of whatever it is. We don't even know what it is. So it's exposure, exposure, exposure. So if we are building the job training spaces in proximity, in my case, I want to do it right in the Globe. It's about exposure to the community that lives around this industry, exposure to, so we can see the scientists, so we can see the jobs, everything from just packaging hazardous material or packaging packaging and movement of material, all the way to the people that are in the white coats in the lab and working with microscopes. We have a wide range of jobs that we can expose people to. So I'm excited about the future, and I think we're on the right path. For me, it's spaces. Where are we going to do this? I know my intention at the Globe is, I think we fight for spaces from the development, and Liz, this is to you, and Kenzie to you, and Eddie. I think we fight with the developers to say, give us space within your buildings so we can train within your buildings. And then they have control of it. It's not just paying into a fund. We should allow the developers or the company owners to be able to fulfill their commitments towards an actual space, so they know where their dollars are being directed. And if we direct the monies correctly, we'll be able to build this workforce, I believe. So more just comments. And Laura, thank you for a couple of points that you made for us today. It makes total sense. And I've been saying it, it's exposure to the industry. How do we get young eyes on this industry so we all have the understanding? So thank you. And thank you, everybody. Thank you, Madam Chair, for running this meeting here today.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Baker. And I think Councilor Baker continues to underscore what I believe is the biggest takeaway, or at least it should be for all of us here, is to really think about access and opportunity and exposure. I mean, the fact that we're talking about the life sciences, and many people will probably have to Google what life sciences means so that they understand what it all entails. And I think that, again, it's the muscle, and making sure that we're always utilizing that muscle so that we can help folks understand what is at stake. So I think that that is key. So I'd like to move on to my next round of questions will be Councilor Flynn, then followed by Councilor Breeden, then Councilor Bach. I know that Councilor Murphy advised me that she had a hard stop at 12, so wouldn't be joining us for the rest. So Councilor Flynn, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia. And myself and Councilor Baker and others had a hearing a while back on the neighborhood process as it relates to, in Council Flaherty, the neighborhood process as it relates to life sciences companies moving into many times residential neighborhoods. That meeting went well. We welcome life sciences in Boston. They play a critical role in the economy of Boston. But we also want to make sure that that success is also shared with the residents of Boston. And I mean kids from the public school system, and I mean immigrant families and working class families and communities of color, kids from Roxbury and Charlestown and Dorchester and Brighton and Southie and all the neighborhoods of the city in Mattapan. So that is also success, is making sure that they can share in this booming economy of Boston, but they need the right skills, they need the right training. In the right skills and the right training, we have to make sure our young people are educated at the earliest ages, kindergarten, first grade, on STEM subjects. That's where I'm focused at. I want to make sure we're able to educate our young students in those fields. So when the time comes that they have a good grasp of life sciences and they can go into a community college, there's a clear pathway, pipeline to the middle class, Bunker Hill Community College, Roxbury Community College. They do an excellent job, and there should be a clear pathway from there to get into Northeastern or Harvard or any of these great institutions. And in my opinion, they should go there for free for Boston residents. You know, I think if these students work hard in community colleges, there should be an opportunity for them in these great universities in Boston to get a bachelor's degree in a life sciences field, regardless of their ability to pay. They should not have to struggle to make ends meet. And this field is too critical, it's too important for communities of color and immigrants and kids from Boston. They need to participate in this as well. So Councilor Mejia, Councilor Braden, and Councilor Block and Baker, thank you for your tremendous leadership in this field. And we're lucky to have your strong support and advocacy on the council. Thank you, Councilor Mejia.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. I'm going to move on now to Councilor Breeden. You now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to go back to something that Midori made the observation about low hiring from community colleges. And I just had a question about, you know, the whole concept or the whole phenomena of credential inflation. And is that putting up barriers to successful entry into this field for folks who maybe have an associate's degree? You know, there's many jobs that don't require a bachelor's degree or a master's degree. And are we, just from your, maybe Laura is maybe the best person to speak to this, but, you know, the whole concept of how big a problem is credential inflation?
I'm happy to speak to this. From my perspective, it is a significant barrier. Even looking at recent job postings, some that will say associate degree required, in the text it'll say this is a great opportunity for a bachelor's degree graduate with no experience. Those aren't the same thing, right? Associate degree graduate and a bachelor's degree earner with no experience. So we spend a lot of time, I think Tren mentioned it, from 2012 to 2018, with Mass Bioed, to working with the industry to help identify the skills that were exactly needed. And it has still been a struggle to encourage the industry to post jobs at the associate degree level. There's a whole category of high school diploma required, and then they jump to bachelor's degree required. There are some, but not at the scale level we're looking for. And we hope to continue making an improvement, and our individual partnerships have resulted in our students getting more jobs, but in my experience, it has not become the default yet. So I see.
Thank you for that. I see Sunny's hand is up, and then Midori. So I'll go to Sunny first and then Midori, and then we can go to the next question.
Yeah, just to address that, I think we've seen some movement from the life sciences companies on this. It's certainly something we've been working on, and I see more openness to hiring people without a bachelor's degree, mostly because companies really need workers. And so I think then they become more open to it. And the more we can place people that have the skills and the attitude and aptitude for the jobs rather than the traditional bachelor's or higher credential, and that they're successful, the more companies will be open to it.
Thank you, Midori.
Yep, just so 2 years ago, the city of Boston partnered with Northeastern University to commission a study on this issue of degree inflation. And when we looked at the resumes of thousands of our residents, what we found is that there's not much skills difference between people with BA degree and people with sub BA degree, right? So the associate degree or lower. The key difference was sort of the technical skills, right? So people came in with the life skills, the management skills, like people skill, teamwork skill. But when it came to like Microsoft Office skill or like any software, specific skill sets, that's where the sub BA folks, right, people without bachelor's degree fall short, right? So our recommendation was that you need to really invest in programs like Apprenticeship Program, these short-term but very high impact programs that many of partners here are doing to make sure that the non-BA folks can sort of compete for these jobs in the industry. But, with that report, when we released this report, we released at the Wayfair headquarters in Back Bay. We invited tons of IT tech companies, and many of them, as a result of this report, have said, "Oh, like we looked at all the job description and kind of done away with, right, this degree requirement." So we're hoping to sort of have the same sort of influence on the life science companies. I think we're just at the start of it, but that's the hope for this degree inflation.
Thank you, and that's very encouraging. I think it's something we have to keep an eye on, and very critical eye on, so that we're not putting up barriers to full participation in this new emerging field of work. So, thank you very much. Thank you both. Thank you all. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's all I have for now.
Thank you, Councilor Breeden. Councilor Bach, you now have the floor.
Thank you so much, Councilor Mejia, and thanks to all of our panelists. I guess just a quick question for Quincy College, which is what your current training space, what's the square footage of that right now? I guess that's for Kate.
Yes, hi. Yep.
Go ahead, sorry.
Our current space right now is, it's very small. We have almost like 1,200 in our standard biotech training program, and then almost like another 800 for our advanced training program, which specifically kind of does the cell tissue training, the ACTA, the HPLS, the upstream and downstream. And those trainings came basically from our advisory board, biotech advisory board, that they felt that a lot of employees did not have very specific skills, and those are non-credit courses.
10,000 square feet, 15,000.
Got it. But so sorry, just to be clear, so you've got your current space is 1,200 square feet with a sort of additional 800 square foot,
correct.
Like advanced space. Okay, and then I forget, is anybody still on who could speak to like the size of the space Justice Start's using over in Cambridge? Or if not, Sunny, could you speak to what Mass Bio? I'm just trying to understand what the size of these different things are right now.
Well, Laura can probably see, Justice Start uses Bunker Hill for their biotech training. So they don't have a biotech training lab. So Laura, Bunker Hill has a whole facility there. So at Justice Start, they're just doing the classroom training in Cambridge, and the biotech training is at Bunker Hill. And for Mass Bioed's program, we're partnering, as Liz mentioned, with Northeastern University for our biomanufacturing training. So it's done out of their facility in Burlington. Right now, they have like 6,000 square feet. They have a very nice facility. I'm glad, Councilor Baker, you're going to get out there on Friday. So we don't need to emulate that. As I was saying before, Councilor Bach, how much you need depends on what else is in the building. So if there are classrooms that you can use somewhere else, you need less. If it's a life sciences building and there are shared facilities around, glass washing and other things that are needed, then you need less space. So it depends kind of what's there. A great model, and I'd love to have you all come to see, is Lab Central, which I talked to Councilor Baker about, which is an incubator space in Boston that has a training lab, a small training lab. They would love to do multiple training labs in the city of Boston that different nonprofits can use. That's a model that we're looking at, and they would be a great one to manage it, because who's going to manage all this space? It's a lot of money and a lot of work and a lot of expertise that's needed to manage lab space.
And who was it who said that they thought 2,500 was kind of a minimum size? I'm sorry that I forgot.
I said that.
Okay. So, but for you, that, like, you're saying that it could be a smaller space if there's other classroom space, et cetera.
Yeah, I think, as Kate just told you, I mean, they have 1,200, 2,000 square feet. I mean, that's kind of the minimum you're gonna need.
Yeah.
But again, yeah, it depends what else is in that space and what other facilities that you can use in there.
Right. If there's centralized facilities that are available. Got it. And then I guess a question for Tren and Midori. I mean, do we have in the broader workforce development space, I mean, what is the city's most successful partnership vis-a-vis actual job guarantees from employers and like people sort of showing up with those hard commitments? Because I feel like since Councilor Baker is emphasizing the space piece, which I think is important, I feel like I'll end this hearing emphasizing I think we need hiring commitments. Like, to me, that's the real game here. And I also think, frankly, that I think we've got lots of employers on the call today and in the space in general who are well-intentioned and want to see the workforce be more diverse. I think we should always operate with eyes wide open about the fact that, like, when you work for a private company, your first goal is the bottom line of that private company. That's the way that our system is set up incentive-wise. And so I feel like when we actually make it employers' problem in the sense of like, they've committed to hire these people, and then it's like, are these people going to be prepared to do the things that our company needs to do to be successful? I think that puts a different kind of alignment of interests in play than when it's just like, hey, would you come to this meeting with us once a year and talk about some innovations you're seeing and what our graduates should know? Like, it's really different when you're like, oh, those are the people coming in. So I just wonder if the city folks could talk a little bit about across any space where we feel like we've got the best model to getting those kind of commitments in play.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Trin is, she may have left already, so I can speak, but she's really the lead and is very knowledgeable about this content area, but I used to work there too. So from my limited knowledge, I can talk about it a little bit. So I think in terms of like getting a firm commitment, I think legally, there is an issue, right? Like where employers cannot say like, I would definitely hire you once you graduate from a specific training program, right? I think the language is more of I will interview you and I will make sure that you get the first kind of line in terms of these job openings. So, with that said, there is an example from like other city, like LA has done like LA Pledge, where IT companies have kind of committed together collectively how many jobs that they will ensure that go to the BIPOC communities. But I think the one example that the city has done is through a linkage fee, the use of linkage fee. So as you know, you get, as a developer, you can either write a check, right, to linkage funding dollar, or you can go into sort of like linkage creation program where in South Boston, Aloft Hotel partnered with Kirk Sykes development team and Best Training Center. So it was a three-party partnerships where developers say, I'm going to use this fund linkage dollar to pay Best to train a number of folks into housekeeping jobs. And in turn, the Aloft Hotel will need to ensure that they hire from this line of workers trained by the Best. So I think, if you have that sort of specific commitment and strings tied to the linkage dollars, especially with a lot of developers moving towards life science and lab development, I think that might be a kind of one of the examples where it's worked really well, right? Because everyone's kind of committed together, right? Everyone has to kind of make it work to make sure that the hotel can run and have the workforce that they need in order to open successfully.
So thank you, Midori, for that. I just wanted to let you know, Councilor Bach, that we have reached time with your question. So I just wanted to just loop us back. I'm really trying to end at 12:30 so that we can give central staff some time to transition. So I am going to just—
Thanks so much, Councilor Mejia.
Yeah, thank you. So just, I'm going to just end the way that I started in terms of the importance of really accountability and metrics, right? Holding ourselves accountable to a set of data points that we're going to be able to then measure in terms of recruitment, retention, and really creating viable employment opportunities for folks. So I think that is the next set of conversations about what that looks like and how do we set ourselves up for success. I also want to thank Councilor Baker and the other sponsors for this hearing order. I think it is, not only is it timely, but it is exactly the right conversation in this moment to be having, as everyone is going to be benefiting from this. And we want to make sure that Bowdoin Street and Dorchester Ave and all of the corners of the city are part of these conversations, and no one is literally left behind. So I just wanted to thank Councilor Baker for being so super laser focused on certain communities, because often our communities are the ones that are left out, and Cambridge and others are the ones who are benefiting from all of these amazing opportunities. So Councilor Baker, thank you for that. I'm going to, I guess what we'll do is just keep I'm gonna see if there's any of my colleagues, any last questions, or if there's anyone waiting to give public testimony. I don't see any. And I'm not sure if anyone has any closing remarks, or are we good to go?
Yeah.
Councilor Baker, you have the floor.
Thank you. Just thank everybody for coming here today. And Midori just hit on something. The point that I'm trying to make is, if we have the spaces that we as district city councils or at-large city councils negotiate with the developers, if they have spaces to be able to do the training in, then we can designate the money from linkage money and from jobs trust money. So we're putting those packs of money towards something, you know. I just think it will give us the most bang for our buck. And I think if we're training, I think we're not going to have like job commitments. I totally agree with you, Kenzie. We're going to need job commitments from Mass Bio. If we're training, I think the people that are going through those centers are going to be at the front line of those jobs, because they need the people, and the charge is going to be to make sure that the people that are most affected in all societal ills are taken care of, at least have a seat at the table or a pathway into these buildings. And I think it's done with setting up the spaces. I think I think the biotech industry will you know, they'll want to hire people if we're able to train them. So thank you. I thought this was a great hearing, and thank you everybody for coming out here today. And if I get the Friday tour together, I'll send it over to people. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And Councilor Mejia, I just wanted to say also a thank you to everybody, and to say that on the Burlington front, I believe that Northeastern's Burlington campus is actually in a carve out of something that was historically a City of Boston owned park. So there's a good connection for us there.
Yes. So would like to thank all of our panelists. Really do appreciate your time and energy. Really excited for the next set of conversations regarding this. And accountability is key. Can't build unless you're building with Boston in mind. So as the chair, I am going to call this hearing to a close and gavel us out. Have a beautiful holiday, and thank you again. Bye-bye.
Thanks all.
Thank you.